Thanks for stopping by my beekeeping channel. Today we got a lot to talk about. We're going to be looking into rotating hive bodies. A lot of people talk about the importance of rotating the hive bodies coming out of winter, and that means that sometimes the bees all move up into upper box, and some people feel that they may never go back down to the lower frames in the bottom boxes. And so they feel the need to rotate them so the queen can get up there and start laying in the spring. Does that really work? Is that really needed? We're going to address that today. Let's get started. Let's get right into it. So today we're going to look at a hive here, and we're going to talk about, is it really worth it to rotate these boxes or not? It's kind of a question that people aren't too sure about. And they're not too sure about when to do it and how to do it. And I'm going to talk to you today, and you're probably going to be surprised what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to give you 3 tips today on how you decide whether you need to rotate your boxes. So be sure and listen to all 3 tips. Let's start with the first tip. Now, this is a typical hive setup here for simplicity purposes, and for the scene today, I have 2 medium supers. Where I live in Illinois, we normally use 2 deeps. In the case where people come out of winter, oftentimes that winter cluster kind of moves up into this top box. And a lot of people say, well, once the cluster, all the bees get up in the top box, then they are not as likely to ever move down again. So people feel like the colony can never gravitate back down on all of the empty combs in that bottom deep, that they always want to move up. That's how a lot of people feel, and they really preach that you need to rotate these boxes because the queen and the colony will never go back down. Now, we know for a fact that is simply just not true. Bees in the wild, bees that live in a tree, a hollowed tree, they are moving back onto comb again. They're not constantly just moving up. They may cluster up higher in that tree during the winter, but as the season warms up, the bees will start using more of the comb below them. So it's not true that bees and the queen never go back down. They will go back down. So let me give you the first tip on whether we need to rotate these boxes or not. Now, let's look at a hive that we just looked at a few days ago, back when it was warm, before it turned cold. It was 24 degrees here last night. Look at this box here, and as you can see, the bees are heavily populated both in the upper deep and the lower deep. Now, in this case, it's not going to do me any good to rotate these boxes because in my case, my population is so strong, I have brood in both boxes. It doesn't do any good when a colony is this large, this populated, and has brood in both boxes to rotate. So tip number 1 is consider the population of your colony. That's the key thing. If the population of your colony is very small and they have all moved up into this top box, let me show you a danger. Let's say that we were back when it was 70 degrees a week or so ago, 60, 70 here in Illinois, and the bees looked good. We went out and looked and inspected, and we noticed that all the bees were up here. This is hypothetical, but they weren't down here in the bottom box, and we thought, oh, they're not on the frames. All these frames are empty. I think I'll rotate it. So too early, we might have rotated it by taking this box off and then putting the lower box on top, and that puts the top box with all the brood and the bees in it on the bottom. Now you can see already what happens when you do this. If you do it this way, now all of our brood is down here. And the reason that's bad is if you rotate them too early, then it's 24 degrees last night. Heat that's created by this winter cluster colony down here begins to rise up. Heat rises. The heat rises up into this empty box and away from the colony. The top is up here, the top cover. It's covering it, of course, but the heat is rising up and escaping up into this box here. These bees become much colder down near the ground or the bottom of your hive where it's cooler, where the heat's rising away from the colony, and that's not a good idea. So tip number 2 is never rotate your boxes too soon. If you do, you're going to put the brood too low, away from the natural rising of the heat when they're up here in the top. I often think that the cluster actually moves up, not only to get into the stores of food like stored honey in the top box, but they also do it because they know it's warmer there. There's more heat that doesn't rise away from them so much. Now, before we get into the third tip, let me encourage you to please subscribe to my beekeeping channel. I want to thank all of you. Wow, I can't believe we've already hit 81,000 subscribers because of you guys being so loyal. I really appreciate that. Please take a moment to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the comment that you enjoyed this video. Tip number 3 is very crucial. Here's the deal. You know, you're a beekeeper, or maybe thinking about it. This winter cluster moves up. They hang out in a tight group when it's below 50 degrees to stay warm. They don't hibernate. They just stay warm, really close to each other. But what happens is this cluster may be partially in the top box, but also a little bit in the bottom box. That means that they may have some brood, just a little bit of brood in this bottom box. Let's pretend for a moment, hypothetical again, but let's pretend that the queen has put some brood in the center, medium, or deep box down here, and we rotate it. So that means that the brood is down in a circle like right here, maybe coming up to about right here. And the rest of this on these frames, like here, would be, you know, brood maybe, but this would be stored honey up here. Now, we have the brood centered about where my hand is here. And if we rotate these boxes, we're actually going to take the brood here at the top, and we're going to move it all the way up here when we rotate these boxes. Let me just show you what that looks like. So that means that there's going to be a gap causing the brood to be spaced out from the other brood. We're kind of putting a space actually in the nest area, the brood nest area. Let me see if I can describe that so you can understand it. So this had a little, it was on the bottom, so it had a little brood here, right? But so the little bit of brood here, this would all be either empty or maybe honey. And the box that was on top had brood more down here. So the brood looks like this, where my two hands are. This area here is not where the brood connects anymore. You've separated the brood nest area. So never, tip number 3, never rotate your boxes coming out of winter in the spring if you see brood in both boxes. The only time that you might consider rotating these boxes is if there's only brood in the top box and most of the bees are up here, but there's no bees at all, or maybe no, especially no brood down here at all. Don't make the mistake of rotating your boxes too early, because if you do, you're putting all the bees up here, you're putting them down here, and then when it turns cold like it did last night, these bees are in the coldest part of the hive, where they used to be in the warmest part of the hive. Doesn't that make sense? These are 3 great tips for you to consider rotating your boxes. Now, can you get by without rotating your boxes at all? Absolutely. And I strongly recommend it. Sometimes we think we know better than bees, that, you know, they're not going to figure out what to do in there. And so we got to help them out and rotate things and move frames and move them around so they know what they're doing. I've stopped rotating boxes. Now, years ago, I've written about rotating boxes. I've spoken at conferences about it. I have PowerPoint presentations about rotating boxes. But I really don't think you should do it. I've always said don't do it too early and don't separate the brood. But I don't rotate my boxes anymore because, as you can see, I come out of winter with bees and brood in all my boxes. So there's no need to separate what the bees are doing. Again, I would only suggest you do it if it's warmed up, and that means that nights are not going to drop below 40 degrees Fahrenheit anymore at night. So if the temperatures are going to be above 40 every night Fahrenheit, then it's probably safe to rotate those boxes, but only when and if all the brood, all the bees are up here, and this one down here is completely void of any bees or brood. Then it makes sense that you could rotate. But let me tell you this, when you do that, there's a bigger problem that's going on. If you have 2 boxes and all your bees have moved up into the top box and left the bottom one empty, doesn't that signal to you that you have a very small colony? It's a very small amount of bees if they just fill up one deep. They were big, they were coming out of winter, they lost a lot of maybe brood, they lost a lot of population of bees, so they're small colony. It demands your attention to figure out, why are they small? Why are they so small that they fill up only one box, that they don't fill up the second box as well? As shown here in this video, again, look how my colonies, they fill up both boxes, all the way from the top down to the bottom. That's what you want coming out of winter. And that's my technique that I'm teaching you guys about feeding bees during the winter time. So if you didn't do that, and your bees are just up in this top box, that means populations are very low. They've got their work cut out coming into spring now, because they have a lot of catching up to do. I hope these 3 tips are really helpful for you guys. I really appreciate a lot you watching this today. It's crucial now that we think about rotating boxes. And again, I don't think it's important to do, especially if you have a very strong colony coming out of winter, going into spring. I would not rotate boxes just to be rotating. Let me remind you guys that if you haven't taken a beekeeping class yet, I beg of you, please do that. TAC, T-A-C, take a class. It's going to help you so much, do a better job at keeping your bees and understanding what you're seeing when you open that hive up. It's going to give you more confidence, and it might even cut down on a little bit of the fear factor when you first start opening your hive up for the first time and you're a little scared of everything. Might help you have a better understanding and put some of that fear to rest and give you more confidence. So here's the link right here to take some of my classes. Please consider it. I've worked hard to make these classes available to help you be a better beekeeper and make fewer mistakes. And I really always appreciate it when you guys purchase my online courses. People are telling me they're a lot of fun, that you appreciate my personality. Hey, I appreciate you telling me that. Enjoy these classes. Get on them today. If you're willing to invest in all the equipment, the high price, I think, of the bees and the equipment and everything, by gosh, invest in knowledge and know what you're doing. All right, let's answer some questions from some subscribers. And we're going to go with the first one, Thomas, who said, "Hi Dave, what is your Facebook ID? I'm new in the bee world, so I'm trying to learn all I can. Love your video, tons of information, thank you." Well, thanks Thomas, I appreciate it. Our Facebook ID, I guess you're looking for where to find our Facebook, just go to Honeybees Online. That is the same name as our website, honeybeesonline.com. And you can see our Facebook there. Sometimes our Facebook does offer special giveaways, so it's not a bad idea to jump in there and see what's going on. Thanks, Thomas, for being a subscriber. Appreciate it. Blessed Gardener says, "Thank you for sharing another wonderful video. I did a mite check and had 4 out of 430 bees. I guess that's 4 mites out of 430 bees. Can I put powdered sugar on them or should I wait? Hive 1-year-old with 1 deep, 1 medium, and thriving great. Never use chemicals, second year keeper. Thanks again, be blessed." Well, yeah, that's a good question. You said you had 4 mites out of 430. That's not very many. Now, I will say that if you did a powdered sugar shake test, that you probably need to add to that number. I'm finding that a powdered sugar test that you do with mites is sometimes not able to get all the mites off of it. Sometimes it does. I've said in the past that I've tested it and it has worked by getting all the mites off by doing an alcohol afterward. No more mites came off. But at the same token, it is very possible, and I would say very likely, that a typical powdered sugar test that you do for mite control will certainly not get all your mites off your bees. So if you want to have an exact number and really wash the mites off, the only way to do that is by killing your bees with alcohol and rinsing them 2 or 3 times with water to get all the mites off of that. But most of us don't enjoy killing bees just to be testing. I understand the validation of it. I understand that so many people say, but it's, you're only killing 300 bees and that way, you're saving the rest by being able to know what to do for mites. I totally get that. I respect that. I'm not saying one is better or shouldn't be done versus the other. I'm saying if you're not gonna alcohol wash your bees by killing them, if that's something that is just too gross or too morbid for you to do, by all means, use the powdered sugar method of shaking your bees and testing for mites. But when you do that, I would suggest you double your mite count, because that would give you a safeguard in case all of them aren't knocked off by that powdered sugar. So in your case, you might have had 8 out of 430, which is not a very high level of mites, something that you could control with green drone comb, breaking the queen's brood cycle, things that I teach in all my online courses. But certainly I would say if the temperatures are good, you asked me about powdered sugar. I think you're asking if you can use powdered sugar to help get more mites off. Remember, I've spoken to this before, but those of you that are maybe new to my channel, powdered sugar, like sprinkled onto your deep, right under these deep boxes or your boxes in your brood nest area, that powdered sugar falling between these frames is going to have some effect on dropping mites, but not a high amount of mites. It has been shown that mites fall off, but it's not the only thing you should use because it is not sufficient alone. You also need to use green drone comb trapping, a screen bottom board to help the mites fall out, and breaking the queen's brood cycle to prevent the infestation of mites. There's other integrated pest managements that we can use like this before we bring out the big guns of formic acid and oxalic acid. But I'm just saying that don't just take one approach and think that's going to save the day. Well, thanks for the question and thanks for being a subscriber. Our next question is from Dan. David, I absolutely love your videos. I've learned so much. I've tried making videos and yes, it's very hard. Can I ask what you use to edit your videos? You do such a great job of editing. I've noticed you've changed your lighting. It looks like Halloween, LOL. Huh. It looks like Halloween back there. Well, I use Final Cut Pro, Dan, to edit my videos. I'm a Mac guy. I love my Macs. I started editing videos way back on PCs when PCs weren't powerful enough to really carry that much workload on video editing. So I went to a Mac that back then Macs were really powerful and could edit my videos, and I just always stayed that way. Final Cut Pro is an outstanding video editing software. Many YouTubers here use Final Cut Pro and we love it. It's fast, it's easy to learn, somewhat easy to learn. When I first got into it, I was probably working really hard for about a year of working it every day of the week before I really felt like I had a good handle on it. So it's a pretty sharp learning curve on Final Cut Pro as any video editing software, but it's easy once you get it memorized and know all your keystrokes and how to use it. It's very fluid, very easy to work. I thoroughly love it. I really appreciate your comments that you enjoyed the video, that you can see the effort I'm putting into it. So thanks a lot, Dan, and thanks for being a subscriber. And again, if you'd like to subscribe and ask me questions, I can't answer all your questions. There's too many to answer, but I do like to pull 2 or 3 out every time I make a video. So subscribe and maybe I'll select your question in a future video. I love this video. I love that I put it together. So many of you have commented that you enjoy it. So relevant to today, how to start beekeeping. Watch this video here if you're interested. It's going to help you get a handle on how to get going, and I'll see you next time.